welcome to a end of season edition of Thursday Mailbag, Expected Buffalo Thursday Mailbag. Of course, thank you for joining me at 10 o'clock on a Thursday night as the season wraps up for the Buffalo Sabres. 82 games in the books, 14 seasons not in the playoffs. Not good. So we are going to, there are roughly, I think, 7 questions we're going to go through tonight, covering a variety of topics as we start to shift slowly into the offseason mode. Locker cleanout tomorrow and Saturday. Adams and Ruff at 4:30-ish on Saturday as well. And we start to get the picture. We start to, well, I think you might already have the picture of what's really going to happen or what they want to do. But we'll hear a little bit more, and then we'll start to move ourselves along into the off season and all of the fun that comes with that for over, I don't know, what are we at? Or 2 months? 2 months really until anything the Sabres involved would actually occur in June. But all right, well, let's not waste any time. Let's get right to the questions here. Like I said, we have a handful to go to. And where we're going to start is we're going to start talking about Noah Ostlund. So Ben's question is, Ostlund has looked reasonably capable in his audition. Is he likely to stick around next season? So through 8 games, a break-even player on goal differential, break-even player on expected goals, played exclusively almost on the fourth line with Malenstein or Roseanne and Sam Lafferty. So he didn't get a massive a look, at least from an offensive standpoint. But I think here what we have is a player that you've seen some of the skills that he has. You've seen the playmaking ability that he possesses. We see that he has some nice HQ and understands where to be defensively, and also understands in the offensive zone what he can do to generate offense. Having said all of that, I think the likely conclusion is that he will be in the AHL again next season. This team likes to give guys at least 2 years down there. So I would anticipate that being the case again. I really don't see a spot where he could steal something if they fill out the roster as they should. So I also don't think they're going to add another younger player into the mix when they're already probably going to have Zach Benson, 20 years old, at 19 or 20. In their top 6, Jiri Kulich is likely going to be their number 1 center at 20 years old. So you're probably not going to want to add another young player into the mix, especially another rookie. So I think all signs in that regard point to him being in the AHL next season. But like I said, I think he's had an impressive AHL season, impressive rookie season. The tracking numbers down there are pretty good for him. The raw numbers are really good for him in terms of production. And then I think that it's been nice now that it's translated up to the NHL, and we've seen some flashes from him. And now he'll go back down to the AHL and try to be a big piece for the playoff push down there for the Amerks. And obviously, I assume he'll be joined by Roseanne and then Kozak when he gets healthy, and we'll see if Jiri Kulich joins them down there too, or if he decides to go play for Czechia in the World Championships. We'll probably know in the next day or two how that unfolds. All right, let's go to this one while we are talking about our young players here. Let's talk about Jiri Kulich next. So the question from Tyler is, how much confidence do you have in Kulich maintaining the 1C position between Thompson and Benson moving forward? So this was something that we talked about a few times that I brought up throughout the season, is the concerns of having a player of his age play in that, first line, second line, whatever, top 6 role. I think where things are a little bit different now is you're going to have Josh Norris as your likely second line center, your other top 6 center. Then you're going to have McLeod as third line, and then probably Krebs as your fourth line center. So I think in that scenario, I feel a little bit more comfortable because of the backup you have behind him, as long as Norris can stay healthy, of course. And then I think what we've seen is it's a bigger sample now that he has been able to maintain playing in that role, has not looked out of place defensively or offensively, continue to generate chances. That line continues to look good offensively, and their numbers reflect upon that. So throughout the season, he's a break-even expected goal differential player, 53% goal differential, And like I said, there's that offensive upside. There was a rookie; his production numbers were pretty good. So of course, there's always going to be some concern there, relying those minutes on a player of his age. And we've seen that breakdown and not work for this organization before. So I think there's certainly a possibility, of course, that could backfire on them. But I think I feel more confident now about it than I did, I don't know, maybe the deadline around that time before that. So I think ultimately he'll be fine. I'm a big fan of Kulich, and I just think he has that potential to be something, really impressive for the team in terms of a top six centerman. When going into the season, I didn't think he could be a center in the league. I thought he was more along the lines of a winger, and he showed me otherwise. So good for him. And I think they really, especially if you're going to keep Tage on the wing, which it looks like they're going to do. Uh, you definitely need Kulich to come through, and I think it's also important before I get off of it. And having said that, is I think Tage's impact shouldn't be undervalued here. He's a guy that can help Kulich in different situations. He's played center in this league. He knows what you have to do. He knows the demands of it, especially playing as a top line centerman. So I think having that player on your line is going to be helpful. And then I think that's why Benson mixes in so well with them too, because you're going to have him as your player of, helping your team, helping that line defensively, being a player that gets the puck out of the defensive zone, being a player that disrupts things offensively on the forecheck, and even being that playmaker for two forwards who are better known as finishers. So I think that trio as, a line really works, and their skill sets build really well off each other. And I hope that they keep that together going into next season. Of course, it depends on what kind of moves they make. Maybe they want to try some new things. But I think at the very least that should definitely be a line that starts next season, and then we'll see how it goes from there. Okay, so that one's done. Oh, where do we want to go? Let's talk about Jack Quinn. So this one comes from Steven. So Steven's question, this is only a part of it, really touched on a few things, asked particularly about his defense. And then overall, the thought was, so he says, I think he has gotten too much criticism this year, especially for a young guy coming off of an injury-riddled season. Can you talk a little bit more about his underlying numbers? So Steven then went on to talk about and ask about what his numbers look like away from Cousins. And that's a fair question. And we've seen a little bit of a pocket here where Quinn has played better. I think that maybe has evaporated over the last few games, but he was good tonight. So, he popped back in again. And, overall, I guess we'll start with the defensive numbers. So I went back and looked at it. His expected goals against per 60 at 5-on-5 are not that good. 2.83, 2.84, and 2.76 this season. The defensive models don't really credit him with any defensive upside. Now, that could be partly of, he mostly played with Cousins, and we know that Cousins has had his struggles there, and then he's also playing with Paterka, and Paterka had his struggles there. So that's part of it. But I think where, going into the season that I thought he would really help getting him back, not only his offense, but his exit ability, in the defensive zone, in particular, is something that was a strong suit for him. And I think this year, that really went away for some reason. Overall, the entire season, of course, he's had issues with puck management, poor decisions, slow decisions, and I think that has really hurt him. And it reflected in that part of his game in particular. He just wasn't the same. There was more turnovers there. So, looking at it now, I'm looking at all three zones data, Corey's data. So it's, a lot of his numbers are not nearly as good as they were last year. Now, they weren't bad. They're still decent numbers in terms of exits, so he's still helping that guard. But his exits with possession numbers were down. His failed exit per 60 was up. His successful retrievals were down. So, I think that is kind of what you need from him to be a helpful player for you. And they just didn't get that type of thing, and really, I think him doing that feeds into the rush where they want to be, and kind of the style that fits him the best when he's on the ice, more than a in zone setup cycle kind of game. I think a rush scheme fits him better. And when he's making those mistakes in the defensive zone and causing turnovers, it's not getting the rush going. He's then not able to help in other parts defensively, and his linemen aren't the best defensively, and it kind of spirals from there. So then now it becomes a question as we move into the offseason here is what are you going to do with him? He's a restricted free agent. And, there's been some things about his off-season workouts, which, could be a little bit of the injury related, could just be didn't get in the best shape that they were hoping for. Whatever it is, there's something there between the team and the player, and I think that they're going to address that in the off-season here. Now, it's difficult for me because I go back and forth on this a lot. I mean, it's still a relatively young player here. That I'm not saying by any means that they should just give up for nothing. It's a former top 10 first round pick that is only 23 years old. He'll be 24 in September. And he's shown those flashes and those upsides in his game. So it's not somebody you just want to give away for nothing. So I don't want them to do that. But at the same time, it becomes a risk assessment. And they have to make a decision as a team in what they see and what they believe in and where they want to be as a team. Is can they risk betting on a rebound from him next season? What that would mean is that he is going to be a middle six winger for you. If it goes poorly, what is the backup plan you would have? Then what do you do with him? Is it a 1-year contract you give him? Is it a 2-year contract? If it goes poorly again, does that lower his value? So do you want to cash in on the value now? It's a really interesting conversation that we're going to get into on Quinn here as we go along. And like I said, I go back and forth kind of daily or weekly when I think about it, what I really think they should do with him. But ultimately, it's something they're going to have to own. And if they decide to bring him back and think that he can rebound next season, and if it doesn't go well, it's clearly going to impact them in the standings most likely. And also, it's we're going to get into Kevyn Adams in a second here. I almost had almost a final nail in the coffin in a sense, especially if it goes really poorly. But I mean, I feel like we've thought the final nail in the coffin was a few times here, but yet we keep going along. So yeah, he'll be one of the main talking points as we go here. I think if he does stay or they anticipate they want to keep him, that I think they'll try to probably keep a close eye on his offseason work and maybe even try to keep him closer to Buffalo. I just think they're really going to push him if he's going to be in the team next year to try to come into camp the best shape he can be, to be as ready as he can be to bounce back for them, because they're going to need it. If he's back on this team next year, they're going to need him to be that player that he was, a year and a half ago before all these injuries happened. And that's part of the conversation too. We shouldn't overlook that. An Achilles injury, then a knee injury. Those are two things that definitely shouldn't be overlooked. But at the same time, it's really was consistent from almost game one, besides, a 7-8 game pocket here at the end of the season, where it just wasn't acceptable. The healthy scratches he was given were deserved. So that there's definitely some thought that needs to go into there. That's, I guess, probably where we'll leave that one. Okay, let's go into, I think the rest of them here are more off-season things. All right, so let's get into Kevyn Adams. So this, I basically pulled David's question, but there was a few people that sent in questions on Kevyn Adams, varying degrees of, are they going to get fooled by this late season run they were on? The trust in Adams himself. So I'll just read kind of what David wrote here. How can a serious numbers guy like yourself, much less a novice fan like me, take this team seriously if Kevyn Adams is not relieved of his duties at the end of the year? Kevin, you got a point. Am I going to tell you that you shouldn't take them, that you should take them seriously? Don't do that. I mean, I've said it, I think, every week now. For every podcast I've done, we brought up Adams. There's not really a valid argument I can make for him to keep his job. And that goes with me saying and believing he has made good moves in the McLeod trade. Zucker signing was a good one. Greenway trade, I guess, in a sense, worked out for them. I don't know, some of the draft picks, Kulich, Ostlund looks nice, Benson for sure. So I mean, there's things, like there's decent things around that look good for you. Because in the middle stat one, I guess that's worked out for them. At least Byram's still on the team. We'll see how much longer he goes, but whatever. Moving past all of that. Yeah, I mean I don't even know if it's year 5 or year 6. I can't remember for him, and not close to the playoffs. Worse. It's been worse. Their points in the standings have gone down every year since they missed by 1 point. 84 points last year. I think they're going to finish 79 or 78 this year. It's not good enough. Not even close to a playoff spot. 2 years in a row when you only miss by a point. And it is failures of doing the things you need to do. It's sitting in a 13-game losing streak and doing absolutely nothing. You can tell me until you're blue in the face that you have learned from it, that you're going to approach things differently, all of this, that, and the other thing. But I don't feel the need to believe it, and I don't have an argument for you to believe it. Fool me once, shame on me. Fool me again, you just can't get fooled again, right? That's the George Bush line. I really am really at a loss for words. What they can do from a front office standpoint. I mean, I know what they can do, but what they're realistically going to do. Like somebody else, I think, asked a question about, is there a possibility of bringing somebody in to oversee Adams? I know that there's been Jarmo Kekalainen was something people kicked around and some other ideas. I just don't think that's going to happen. I just don't think ownership and Pegula in particular really wants somebody else over that, or somebody that in a sense is kind of, I don't want to say butt heads, but is going to be more of an overseer. I don't think that'll happen. Now, I do see a scenario and a possibility. What could happen is they bring somebody in from outside the organization in the front office, some sort of different role. I still think that Adams would be your general manager, but maybe advisor is the right word, or given some sort of something. I don't think it's going to be the president of hockey operations, but I think that maybe they classify as part of the scouting staff. They bring a pro personnel guy in or something. I think it wouldn't surprise me if they brought a little bit more experience into the front office. I'm not telling you I've heard they are. I'm not telling you that I think they will. I'm just saying if they ended up doing it, it wouldn't be surprising, and it's a way to have a front office change without really changing that much. Because I don't anticipate, at least sitting here today at 10:23 on Thursday, that we're going to see much front office change besides maybe some scouting rotation, something like that. I think if we're going to see really any changes overall, it's going to be in the assistant coaching staff, and we'll still, we'll have to see how that all plays out. But I think that is the area that they would look at to make some changes and kind of, send a message to fans that we're changing some things up. And that is the avenue they would go. I think there's a few interesting options that we'll see if they become available over the next week as season wraps up for all teams, and some coaches and coaching staffs are, let go or contracts expire, and what that would mean for kind of the market and some guys they could bring in. So we'll let that play out first before we start just chucking names out there. And then we'll start kicking around realistic things. And obviously we want to see really if they are going to make these coaching staff changes. I feel like we should have a good idea by the weekend, but you never know with this team. They could say they're going to review it and not give us an answer, but we'll see. But overall, I mean, yeah, I don't blame anybody for not having faith. There's nothing here showing that you should have faith, while understanding that some nice things have been done and some good moves have been made. Overall, the results are the results. Results-oriented business. You're not getting in the playoffs. You're not even getting close. And it seems like you're going in the wrong direction here as you tumble back down the hill. And, 14 years is no joke. And hopefully, you don't have a 15th, but like I said, there's not a lot of hope there to bite into right now. Okay. All right. So I think these next few are off-season ideas. So let's go to this one from Calgary. It's one of the favorite ones people always bring up. So this one comes from Daniel. Would you trade Bo Byram for Rasmus Anderson with no extension? And he also put in there, and I believe that Dan Vladar is a perfect goalie for the Sabres and signed 1 year, $2.75 million. So I'll start with the Vladar part. I think Vladar is horrendous as a goaltender, to be perfectly honest. I have no interest in that, really. To each their own. Goalies are whatever. But I have no interest in Vladar. I would just as much just put Levi in there and see how things go, or get somebody else. But Vladar doesn't interest me whatsoever. Byron for Anderson, would I do it? I mean, yeah, I would. I think Anderson is a little bit overinflated in this market. This market being Buffalo, what fans think of him. I think he's a decent defenseman still, but I don't think he's as good as people think, perhaps. Just my opinion. But yeah, I mean, that's something I do because I think Anderson's going to be cheaper than what Byram would cost you. And then, I guess to your point, you have that contract aspect of it, which I'm trying to look up right now. I think he has 1 more year left, but I'm trying to figure that out right now. But either way, he's going to need a new deal eventually. But so then when he does, that could bump up that, the cap hit number on you there. So yeah, he has 1 more year left at $4.55 million. So you're going to have to pay him too. But right shot, 28 years old. Yeah, I mean, that's something I would definitely consider doing. But realistically, I don't know, maybe Calgary would do it. I was going to say, I don't know if they'd be that interested in it, but maybe they would. Anderson is the guy who wears the letter, though, so I don't know. And plus, you're going to run into trade protection, too, with Anderson. So that always is a fun thing here in Buffalo to deal with. So, yeah, to answer the question overall, yeah, I'd probably do that, but I don't know how real it is. But Vladar, no thank you at all. Okay, few questions left. We are at 22 minutes. We are cruising right along here. I'm writing down where I'm at. Okay. The next one. This one comes from Justin. With the Sabres in search of a right-hand D help this summer, could Damon Severson be an option for them? So Severson, it was last year, right? When he was the sign and trade, I think it was last year, to Columbus from New Jersey. 30 years old, right shot defenseman. He has $6.25 million. I think he has 6 years remaining on the contract, right? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 more years remaining on his contract. I don't. Well, let's start here. First of all, he has a no trade clause, so that's probably going to be an issue right out of the gate. Getting him to waive to go to Buffalo might be a little bit problematic there. Overall, though, I just don't know. For that amount of money, I was never a big fan of him in the first place. I understand his numbers were what they were. I know Anthony was a big fan of his. I kind of always thought that maybe he was like a Dougie Hamilton merchant a little bit. His numbers in Columbus aren't terrible. It's tough. It's always for me that, and if he comes here, I guess he played Power and Darlene, so you have that partner support he would have too. Yeah, I guess overall, I just don't think he's that great. And for 6 more years, and he's 30 now, so you're going to commit until he's 36. And then what is the acquisition cost of that going to be as well? It's a tough pill to swallow. It's something. I think I'd have to sit with that. I keep going back and forth as you hear me. I'd probably, if I have no better options, I would do that. It really all depends on what the acquisition cost is going to be. What am I going to have to give up to get him? Is it going to have to be significant assets? Is it just, simply as a cap dump? Basically, it comes down to, maybe this is the best way to put it. Would Columbus want Jack Quinn or would Columbus want JJ Peterka? Like, those are the two, I guess you can play cuts of return. Which one would they want? If they want Peterka, I don't know if I'd be interested. If they want to do a Jack Quinn type return or, in that neighborhood of assets, then maybe I'm more about it and would consider that. Um, we're in a position here, for the Sabres where beggars really can't be choosers. And it's weird for me, as a numbers guy, to see a guy that has such good numbers like Severson does at 5-on-5 and then be like, eh. But it's just, I go that way with some guys. There's some things that I just don't find that impressive about their games when I watch them. And then there's some things where the numbers don't look good. And I kind of go that way. I think I was a little bit higher on like Scott Lawton, for example, than some people were. I feel like whenever I watched him, that he was a decent player. The numbers didn't reflect that. I wouldn't have paid what the Maple Leafs paid for him, but I think there was a better player than the numbers indicated, and that's just that's why you use the eyes, the numbers, and you put it together and form yourself a decision off of that. So Severson, yeah, I spent. So I have my first mock off season that I'm going to be releasing tomorrow to everybody in written form. I do it, before the playoffs start every year when the season ends. That's what my first one is. And then my second one is, I forgot. I think it's at the combine starts is my second one, and then third one is the final one is the day before the draft. Anyways, I spent a huge portion of my day going through like various ideas and suggestions, and you'll see tomorrow where I landed on for the first time. I don't love it, but there's fun things, and I'll tell you a few things I didn't use. Some fun ideas I kicked around. I kicked around a JJ Peterka for Jonas Brodin from Minnesota. So Brodin is 31 years old. He's a few years left on his contract. He loses trade protection this offseason. He no longer has any trade protection in his contract starting July 1st. So that is a hurdle the Sabres would have to clear. And he's, that perfect defensive partner you can put with Dahlin, the veteran experience and all of that. And Minnesota has a lot of guys coming up there. They have Faber, they have Bouillon, and they still have, their list of other defensemen that they have there too. So maybe that's something that they would consider. So that was one idea. I kicked around Bo Byram for Andrei Svechnikov. That was something that I had in there for a little bit and then went away from that. That is Carolina is always intrigued by those microstat defensemen, and I think Byram would fit that. And then Svechnikov is somebody that they can maybe look to move. Hasn't been when they expected, and if they really want the defenseman, it also clears out some cap space for them. Although they have a ton of cap space right now, so I don't know if they need to do that. But if they kind of want to flip their death, because they're going to lose Orlov most likely. Burns is also a free agent, so they're going to have some holes on that defense, even though they brought the kid over from Russia. So he could step into the lineup next season, but still. So that was something that I wrestled around with too. Oh man, what else? Bo Byram for Jared McCann was something that I had some fun with and thought about that. Was there any other Peterka ones? I don't think so. I don't think anything crazy that I can remember off the top of my head. But yeah, it was it's a challenge. The free agent class itself isn't great this year, and there's a lot of buyer beware in there. I don't think Mitch Marner was a realistic thing, but there were a lot of players in there that be careful. Matthew Shane is one, in my opinion, where I wouldn't want the Sabres to go near that. That's, a guy who was declining heavily, had a nice bounce back year at 36, 35, 36 years old in Dallas. Don't buy on that. Do not buy on that. Don't be the team that does that. I'm trying to think of anything fun that I did that I ended up using, but I can't. It's all blank and a blur to me now. But there were some interesting ideas that I definitely went through. I looked at some of the Flyer guys. A lot of people like Tyson Forrester. I don't know. He's okay. I don't think it's anything that fantastic. He's got some decent size, and I, I, I guess he has some offensive upside. I don't know. I just don't think there's a lot there to really intrigue me that much. But I did look at that, but didn't end up going there. So you'll see tomorrow where I did land. I took a little bit of a big swing. So I'll leave it at that. You'll see where I ended up tomorrow on that. Okay. Let's go to the last question. So I saved this last question for the end because it's a non-hockey question, and I see my good friend Steve here is in the chat, so he'll like this question. Maybe he can throw some ideas in the chat too. So the question came from John, and this is, you've heard me talk about it over the last couple, month or so. State competitions, cooking competitions. Like I tweeted that I told people who listen, podcast listeners, that we do have an SCA event coming to Buffalo in July. So if you're interested in doing that, please sign up for that because that'll be a good time over 2 days. Cooking wings, tailgate, steak, ribs, something cereal, an appetizer. A lot of good stuff, a lot of fun stuff. Anyways, the question that came in from John here is, what is your piece of advice for the carnivores in the audience that is extremely important but often overlooked by grilling normies? So he said, like, cuts of meat that are actually good, seasoning combos. That is the question from John here. I thought about this question a lot, and I don't. and Steve might get mad at me. I don't have anything glaring that sits out. So I'll just tell you some things that I found interesting over the last, maybe 2 years that I've gotten into this more. I'm not even the main person that does it. I'm more the helper person. But nonetheless, some of the few things I found that were interesting. And again, when you're doing this at home compared to when you're doing it in competition, there are a lot of different steps. Like I definitely, in a competition state, the things that are done are bananas. I'll just say that. I mean, you pick the right cut of meat, and the judges only take a certain part of it. In most cases, you get a ribeye, and they take what's called the spinalis. So that's the one part in the end of the steak. For those members that don't know, and really, that's kind of the part that you focus on because that is what they're going to eat. But also, appearance goes into it. The texture of the steak, obviously, the temperature that it's cooked at, that all matters and plays into it too. But I mean, you go pick your steak, and that's important too. So you want to have the right cut of steak that you pick, and then you bring it back to your table, and then you trim it because you want to cut off the fat and have it like in a hockey puck format, essentially. And then you string it with our, jokingly at Paradise City, we have our string boy. You string it, pin it to keep it kind of in that position. You put it back in the cooler, let it sit for how much ever time. And then there's the marinade process. Well, first of all, you season it one time, then you marinate it. Let's sit in the marinade for a while. Then you bring it out and you season it again. And then I'm probably missing steps here, but whatever. Just you kind of give an idea how it's a lot already. And then you go into the cooking portion of it, and the cooking is different than you would do at home because you really want to get those strong grill marks for your appearance. So like that's like a minute and a half, minute 40 seconds on. Flip it really quick, another minute and a half, minute 40 seconds on again to get those grill marks. And then you let it sit off of the grill grates, kind of just above in the heat, to cook to the temp that you want. And then, of course, you bring it off, you rest, and then you hit it kind of with your final seasoning. And you got to make sure all your string and your pins are out, of course, because we get disqualified. And then you hand it in. So really, like I said, competition-wise, it's insane, all the things that go through. But really, for me, I think for just when I'm at home, what I found interesting, I always use I just marinated and then, lightly seasoned, your standard salt, pepper. There's nothing wrong with that. Salt, pepper, Montreal seasoning, your go-tos, that's great. Good grand. That's kind of what I always did. And what I've realized is the marinade, I'm now using it more as a tenderizer. So I'm not keeping it in as long. I'm using it more as a tenderizing agent. And then I'm more heavily seasoning it with the rubs. And it's not just one rub, it's your combination of rubs, depending what you're going for. and then letting it sit longer too, I think is important. You really don't want to cook the steak when it's too cold. You kind of want to let it sit out and get a little bit more, I don't want to say room temperature, but kind of, not be that cold when you put it on the grill. And then, of course, obviously, you should know that you should be resting it. But really, even from like it's a Beyond Steak, it's like cooking the chicken too. Like I was always like a always check on it, open the grill, close it, open the grill, close it, flip it. But me not knowing, but learning, like you're losing heat when you do that. Every time you open it, you lose the heat escapes, and you disrupt your cook essentially. So what I've learned kind of as I'm doing even the chicken and even the steak is you kind of, you like I said in the beginning, you put it in for that, you get your sears, if you will, for your minute and a half, minute, 30 seconds on the grill, flip it each side, and then you kind of get it off of the bottom heat. What I do is I put it on the top level of the grill, close it, let it sit for how many ever minutes, 5 to 6 to 7, 8, depending what you're cooking. Go back in there, do one flip, let it sit for the 5, 6, 7, 8. And then pull it off and obviously let it rest. So, I always thought that there was a possibility that you could over season meat, and definitely you can't. I think for sure I learned that I was under seasoning it. So don't dump a whole bucket of rub on your meat, but or a whole container. But I think don't be afraid, I guess maybe the way I put it. And even Steven here again, Steve knows a lot more than me. I spend time in Texas getting a whole lesson from Steve, but I'll read Steve's message in here for those that can't see it. Steve says, all I will say in a broad spectrum would be that seasoning is an art, where what rubs you use and place definitely matter. It's a science no matter what you are cooking. So I'll even throw Steve's comment up here so you can see it if you're watching. Steve knows a lot more than me. He is an excellent cook in these competitions. He places very high. The lesson that he gave me, it was incredible. Things that we will take to competitions going forward for sure. Our team will. But yeah, I rambled on a lot longer than I thought I would about cooking steak and cooking meat and stuff like that. But it's fun. It's never something that I thought I would get into, but it's spending time with your friends and kind of hanging out and meeting new people. I think that's the interesting thing too. If you do sign up and you do come, is the people that you meet at these events. It forms long-lasting relationships. I mean, there's a I had Joe Green stuff up here from Big Bear Barbecue. Met him at a rib competition last year, and he came to Texas with us. He goes to a lot of competitions we do, and you build that friendship, build that relationship. Steve, longtime follower, there he is. We both go to Texas, not knowing we're going to be there, and then bam! Oh, hey, we like, hey, I follow you. I like your stuff. Like, it's Steve and his wife Catherine are great people. And some of the other people we met at Camp Noble is what we call it. We called it down in Texas. Was amazing. It was awesome. So yeah, I'm talking it up. Like I said, SEA event July 18th and 19th, right outside. Maybe across the street's a better way to put it, from the Bill Stadium. It'll be a fun 2-day event, so I'm going to tweet about it again. You'll see it, so keep an eye out for that. Do that. It's fun. And you don't get to cook steak. You can just do ribs. You can just do wings. You can do ribs and wings. Whatever event you want to get yourself in, feel free to do so, because we're going to have a good time. We're going to have a bunch of fun. All right. That is it. I have to get back to finishing writing this mock off-season article for you to digest tomorrow. So thank you very much, everybody, for listening. Enjoy the Easter weekend. And for you wrestling fans out there, WrestleMania weekend as well. I am very excited. So are my kids. Very excited for WrestleMania weekend. We will also see what Adams and Ruff have to say on Saturday. By the way, really quickly, 4:30 on Saturday seems a little bit cowardly. I'll just leave it at that. I maybe would have done it on a normal weekday during business hours, but sure, let's sneak that in at 4:30 on a Saturday during Easter weekend. Why not? Go ahead. All right, so that's just my 2 cents on that. So thank you for listening. Really, I appreciate that. Forgot the season's at an end. It's over. So thank you for listening throughout the entire season. The support that you've given as a listener or a subscriber, I really cannot state how thankful I am. Speaking on behalf of Eddie and of Anthony too. Your support and your following, as frustrating as this is as a team to follow and do, really keeps us going. So the questions you send in, the interactions you give with us, while at times, I like to say we like to hit each other with pool noodles back and forth at times of frustration. It makes this worthwhile. And really, a lot of people ask, like, all right, so are you done now and taking time off? Like, no way, man. Like, this is kind of like busier right now until the middle of July, and in the season is the most sensitive. So we've already started off-season content. We're really going to ramp it up now that the season's over because there's no more games to worry about, except the Amerks. We will be following the Amerks in a playoff push. They have 2 more games this weekend, and then the playoff starts. So we'll be watching them diligently once that gets started. But yeah, thank you again. I wish it was a playoff year. I wish we were talking about a playoff series. Maybe one day I'll know what that is like. All right. Well, again, thank you. Appreciate it. But like I said, we're not close to done yet. So stay tuned, and a lot more to come over the next few months from the podcast version, from a written version. Yeah. All right. Talk to you later. See ya.